What is the load that our application can handle without crashing? To find out, we need to run a breakpoint test. With such a test, we can determine the maximum capacity of the application. This test gradually increases the load from 0 up to a very high value. The idea is to find the point where the application starts breaking. If we were testing a bridge, we would be adding load to it until it collapses. The load needs to be gradually increased, similar to a load or a stress test. However, this breakpoint test has only one stage, which is essentially an almost infinite scale up. Let me show you how to configure this in case 6. So you can just go ahead and, for example, duplicate the spike test. And I'm going to go ahead and rename this in breakpoint test. As I mentioned earlier, in a breakpoint test, we only have one stage. So essentially, we have a very long duration of the test. So for example, let's say 2 hours, can even be longer. And we also have a very high number of users, essentially something that is way beyond anything that we have tested before. So something infinitely almost, something that the application will never be able to handle. So this is how the test can look like, only one stage. Now, even we have specified here 2 hours, you need to keep in mind that such a test does not have a predefined end. We need to closely monitor the application and notice the point when the error rate is very high or the response times unacceptable. It is also possible that the application stops responding altogether because it has simply crashed. This is the moment when we need to manually stop the test and write down the number of users it was able to handle. So let's go ahead and see how the execution looks like. I'm going to start here K6 run. I'm going to use breakpoint test. So you'll see here the number of virtual users gradually increasing. Now, the thing is, how do we know when to stop the test? Well, as you can see, the K6 CLI will not output the metrics in real time. For this kind of test, we can't wait for the end of test summary to show up because we will need to manually stop the test. So without looking at the metrics, we don't know whether we should stop the test or not. So for that reason, we're going to go ahead and stop the test right now with Control-C. And of course, when we stop it, we're going to get this report. Now, just because the K6 CLI cannot show this, it doesn't mean that we cannot get access to this information. K6 can export this data to a file or send it to an external server where we can watch the metrics in real time. However, configuring this is a more advanced topic, which we will discuss in the upcoming section. As you can probably tell, this is not the most trivial test, so we'll not get any deeper into it. The point of this lecture was to just give you the general idea around this test. Knowing the limits of an application is an important step toward proactively determining if the application is about to crash in a real scenario. This can help infrastructure engineers reallocate resources or shut down some services that are not mission critical. It is very important to understand the infrastructure where the application is running. Cloud infrastructures typically offer almost endless scalability, which is typically called elastic scaling. While it is important to test the scale up and scale down mechanism, a breakpoint test is not really suitable for such environments unless they have been explicitly configured how much they are allowed to scale. Most likely the environments will be elastic, but the budget for cloud expensives not. So in conclusion, a breakpoint test is designed to determine the maximum capacity of an application. Because we expect the application to crash, this test should not be done on a production environment unless the auto-scaling capabilities of a production system need to be tested at a maximum. Apart from this, it only makes sense to run a breakpoint test after the successful completion of a load test and of a stress test. So first run a load test, then a stress test, and only then you should think about breakpoint testing.